Out of nowhere, Mel Gibson steps into the spotlight, not for a movie, but for something way more intense. From rugged action hero to visionary director, his journey hasn't just shaped the film industry, it's shaken it up. And when he finally sat in the director's chair, everything changed. But it was the passion of the Christ that really shook the world. But that was the point. Gibson was determined to show exactly what the Bible described. Everything we thought we knew about the Shroud of Turin, turns out we might have had it all wrong. Out of nowhere, Mel Gibson steps into the spotlight, not for a movie, but for something way more intense. During his time on the Joe Rogan Podcast, he dropped bombshells about the Shroud that have people stunned. Even longtime skeptics are backpedaling. So what exactly did Mel say that's flipping the script on one of history's most controversial relics? Let's break it down. For decades, Mel Gibson has been one of Hollywood's most recognizable names. From rugged action hero to visionary director, his journey hasn't just shaped the film industry, it's shaken it up. But before the red carpets and global fame, he was just a kid from New York, born in 1956, the sixth of 11 children in a tight-knit Catholic family. When the Vietnam War loomed, Mel's father made a life-altering choice. He packed up the entire family and moved them to Australia, dodging the draft and setting the stage for something bigger. It was there, down under, that Mel's passion for the arts took hold. He studied at the prestigious National Institute of Dramatic Art in Sydney, where he dove headfirst into classical theater. Everything from gritty contemporary roles to Shakespeare. But theater wasn't where his story would stay. His breakout role came with Mad Max, a post-apocalyptic cult hit that threw him into the global spotlight. The raw energy he brought to that character made him a household name overnight. That success lit a fire that only grew. Hollywood came calling, and with it came Lethal Weapon, another smash hit that cemented Gibson as an international superstar. Sequels followed, so did bigger roles, but Mel didn't just want to act. He wanted to tell stories on his own terms. And when he finally sat in the director's chair, everything changed. Braveheart was the first major sign that he wasn't just another actor trying to direct. It was gritty, emotional, and it swept the Oscars. But it was the passion of the Christ that really shook the world. Hollywood didn't know what hit it. While the industry leaned heavily into moral ambiguity and commercialism, here came a film that didn't flinch from faith. It told the final hours of Jesus Christ with raw intensity. No sugarcoating, no filters, just brutal honesty. The film opens with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane and follows him through betrayal, trial, and crucifixion. The violence wasn't softened. It was harsh, graphic, and for some unbearable. But that was the point. Gibson was determined to show exactly what the Bible described, the full extent of Christ's suffering. From the Sermon on the Mount to the Last Supper, the film captured biblical moments with intense reverence and unflinching detail. The impact was massive. No other Christian film had ever stirred so much emotion or conversation. But it wasn't all praise. The film drew sharp criticism, accusations of anti-Semitism, concerns over the graphic violence, and questions about Gibson's own controversial behavior. His personal demons, including arrests and public meltdowns, only made the backlash stronger. For a while, he faded from the spotlight, but Gibson wasn't finished. Years later, he returned with Hacksaw Ridge, the story of a Christian combat medic who saved lives without ever carrying a weapon. It was another faith-infused tale of courage, and it proved Gibson still had that fire behind the camera. He even took a role in Father Stu, a film starring Mark Wahlberg, adding yet another chapter to his growing list of Christian-themed projects. For over a decade now, Gibson's been leaning more into faith-centered work. In a recent sit-down on the Joe Rogan Experience, he finally opened up about why. He revealed plans for a sequel to The Passion of the Christ, this time focusing on the aftermath, the disciples, the resurrection, and the Great Commission. According to Gibson, the Gospels aren't just stories, they're history. He pointed to non-biblical accounts of Jesus that scholars have verified, insisting there's more evidence out there than people realize. Then came the twist that no one expected. Gibson dropped a bombshell. He believes in the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin, not just as a symbol, but as real, physical proof of Christ's resurrection. The shroud, a centuries-old linen cloth housed by the Catholic Church, is believed by many to be the burial cloth of Jesus. For years, it's been surrounded by debate and skepticism, but Gibson's faith in it seems unwavering. Back in 1898, an amateur Italian photographer named Secondo Pia was granted permission to photograph the shroud. What he saw when he developed the negative stunned him and the world. The image that appeared was more than just cloth fibers. It showed the detailed impression of a man lying, and not just any man. The features eerily matched traditional depictions of Christ, right down to the wounds. That photo sparked a century of analysis. Scientists, theologians, and skeptics have all examined the cloth, trying to decode its origin. Some claim it's a medieval forgery. Others argue its complexity and precision couldn't have been replicated back then. But Gibson's point was simple. If this shroud is real, it's the most compelling piece of evidence for the resurrection that the world has ever seen. But what does the Bible actually say about the Shroud of Turin? Not much, at least not by name. There's no direct mention of it in the four Gospels. But according to Scripture, after Jesus' crucifixion, his body was wrapped in linen by Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus before being placed in the tomb. That detail is enough to raise the question, could the Shroud of Turin be that same burial cloth? For decades, scientists and researchers have gone back and forth over whether this ancient linen is authentic or not. Some dismissed it as a medieval hoax, while others believed it held something far more powerful, evidence of the divine. In the 1970s, the first serious investigation took shape when a group of scientists known as STURP, the Shroud of Turin Research Project, launched a full-scale study on the cloth. Their conclusion? They couldn't explain the image. No paint, no dye, no pigment. And the energy needed to burn such a detailed impression of a man into the cloth? Not even close to possible in the first century. Not with any known technology, ancient or modern. Then came the carbon dating test in the 1980s. Teams from major universities claimed the shroud dated back to the 13th or 14th century, calling it a forgery. The media ran wild with it. For many, that was the end of the story. Case closed. But it wasn't. Years later, that data was re-examined. Turns out the results had been cherry-picked. The tests were done on a section of the cloth that had been repaired after fire damage centuries ago, fabric that wasn't even part of the original shroud. And the scientists behind the test? They never reached a solid agreement. The whole conclusion was rushed to avoid public embarrassment. That's where Mel Gibson enters the picture. In a recent conversation with Joe Rogan, he dove deep into why he believes the Shroud of Turin is the real deal. For Gibson, this isn't just an artifact. It's the strongest piece of evidence pointing to the truth of Jesus' resurrection. And he's not the only one thinking that way. Even some of the scientists from the original STURP team admitted the image couldn't be explained by natural means. They said the formation of the figure had to come from a burst of energy, something beyond human understanding. Looking at the cloth closely, the details are haunting. A male figure, typical Hebrew features of the time, his body covered in wounds, lashes across the back, gashes on the head, puncture marks in the hands and feet. Every injury lines up with what the Gospels say about the crucifixion. And then there's the pollen. Scientists discovered grains embedded in the cloth that trace back over 2,000 years, matching flora native to the Jerusalem area. The weave of the linen itself is consistent with textile patterns used in the first century. One scholar who worked on translating the Passion of the Christ in Aramaic even pointed out a shocking detail: coin imprints over the eyes of the man on the shroud. That was a Roman burial custom during crucifixions, where coins from the era of Emperor Tiberius were placed over the eyes of the dead. It matched tradition, it matched history. The problem with the tests done in the 80s wasn't just faulty fabric, it was flawed science. The parts of the shroud examined had been patched after the cloth was damaged in 2 major fires. Water damage, smoke, repairs, all of it tainted the results. And when more accurate samples were tested later, they told a very different story. Gibson and Rogan talk about how the evidence supporting the shroud's authenticity tends to hold up under pressure, while the arguments against it often crumble when put under the microscope. And it's not just about physical proof. Some of the scientists who studied the cloth walked away changed. Lifelong skeptics became believers after working on it. Some called it a spiritual experience. Others said it shattered everything they thought they knew. With no paint, no brushstrokes, and no explanation for how the image was burned into the fabric, it challenges science, faith, and everything in between. To reproduce that kind of detail would have taken energy on a nearly atomic level. Not fire, not light, something entirely different. Something supernatural. What are your thoughts? Tell us in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel and why not hit that like button? Thanks for tuning in and see you in the next one.